They're coming. They're coming your way. They'll be here soon. Will you be ready?
On June 8th, 2009, the Something Awful forums hosted a Paranormal Pictures Photoshop contest. The contest would have contestants test their photo manipulation skills by taking otherwise normal photos and manipulating them into more paranormal encounters, such as having a spooky ghost show up in a photo that wouldn't otherwise have one. The point was to be as convincing as possible, spreading it everywhere around other forums and making everyone truly believe that these were real sightings. One particular user that went by the name of Victor Surge, real name Eric Knudsen, posted 2 photos of children playing at a playground with an ominous strange figure looming over them in the background. Under the first photo, the caption read, "We didn't want to go, we didn't want to kill them, but its persistent silence and outstretched arms horrified and comforted us at the same time." The second photograph had this caption, one of the recovered photographs from the Sterling City Library blaze, notable for being taken the day which 14 children vanished and for what is referred to as the Slender Man, deformity cited as film defects by officials. Fire at library occurred 1 week later, actual photograph confiscated as evidence. The Slender Man was described as having a blank, expressionless face, a tie and a suit that gave off the guise of his normality, a tall, slender appearance in which his height ranges from 8 to 15 feet tall. When he approaches you, you begin to feel sick, nauseous, you begin to hallucinate. Electronic devices also reportedly go haywire when in proximity to him. There's no real reason as to why Slender stalks his prey, or even who his prey is, but he is known to stalk you for days, weeks, months, even years, until you eventually give in to him. When you do, he grabs you, lifts you up high, impales you into branches, and harvests your organs. This is who Slender Man is, and this, for many, was the source of nightmares for years to come. The inspiration for Slender Man, according to Victor Surge, actually came from a multitude of sources. Some notable works of fiction, including H.P. Lovecraft's books, Stephen King's The Mist, Zach Parsons' That Insidious Beast, which I'm not familiar with, but it's there, Resident Evil, and really just anything scary. You look at Slender Man and you think, well, he's not actually that scary, and to be honest, you would be right. Really, I wasn't scared of him at all when I was a kid. I thought he was a bit silly, but nonetheless I respected the craft that went into creating him and bringing him to life. From the Something Awful forums to the creepypasta and eventually to the web series. Let's talk about Marble Hornets. It's about goddamn time. Something I've really wanted to talk about since last year's Traumathon, but I never really got around to it. Well, here we are now. Let's jump right into it. Marble Hornets was a web series that featured a character named Jay Merrick who tried to uncover the mystery behind why his friend Alex suddenly stopped producing his student film only after 3 months of filming. Upon further investigation, Jay soon realizes that his friend was being stalked by this strange creature and slowly began to lose his mind during this process, and his tapes were also corrupted or perhaps tampered. Soon, the series switches from Alex's lost tapes and perspective to Jay's eventual investigation as he films certain sites and locations by himself. Things are further complicated when he finds out that he's being stalked himself by someone or something known as the Operator, alongside his little minions or proxies that occasionally hack into the channel and upload their own videos. The series lasted from June 20th, 2009 all the way until June 20th, 2014. It's hard to believe, but the series really did last for 5 years, though that's honestly debatable, as some spin-offs were made from the success, though nobody ever really watched them, and the magic of the Marble Hornets sort of died down after that. The series also wasn't ever really consistent with their uploads. They tried to be as canonical as possible with their upload schedule. For example, if something bad happens to Jay or any other main character, then there wouldn't be an upload for a long time, or if there's something like a sort of major event that was happening that has the characters moving, then we wouldn't see any upload until the character quote-unquote settles down. This sort of grounded the story and setting, despite it having supernatural elements involved. It really made you feel like it was part of the real world, like this was somehow happening somewhere in America. And to some degree, it did fool quite a handful of people. Of course, the crazier things started to get, the less people believed it was true. Though the point of this story was to make it seem like it could have been true, not to actually fool you into thinking that it was. It's the immersion that got a lot of us hooked, especially little old boring me who loves slow-paced stories. Still, the immersion came at a cost. While yes, the story was rather interesting when it first started off, things started to taper off later on. Especially since the people behind Marble Hornets wanted to be as realistic as possible with both the filming and the upload schedule, which some of us might argue was really just randomized more than it was immersive, but I want to believe that they actually planned out when they would schedule their uploads, though the longer it took for them to upload, the less interest people had for the next episode. It didn't help that when we eventually did get an episode, keep in mind like about 5 months or 4 months later, it would usually be about 6 minutes of filming in some abandoned building or the middle of the woods, and then like 4 seconds of spooky stuff. People just didn't like to wait, and the results often wasn't that rewarding. Even if we were dedicated to the lore, as the youngsters would say, normies wouldn't really find this appealing. Hell, even I didn't finish the series, and I was pretty invested for a long time. The problem for me was that the upload schedule, while it was, again, immersive, was just so very hard to keep up with. I mean, the interest really dies down after you're waiting for like 5 years for some sort of resolution, especially since around this time, creepypastas and online creepy culture was just exploding. This was around the time creepy content creators were on the rise, and if not then, there was a new creepypasta or SCP that got people reinterested in something else. That's not to say that Slender Man was even dying. In fact, during Marble Hornets' run, 2 video games called Slender the 8 Pages and Slender the Arrival released in 2012 and 2013 respectively. There are multiple versions of the Slender game, but of course, the more popular one I feel was the original 8 Pages. This game lacked any sort of story or mechanics, and it was more or less a spooky walking simulator with just one objective: collect the 8 pages. This may or may not be a reference to the Marble Hornet series, though I can't honestly remember if it is. I do remember Alex scribbling Slender Man images everywhere in one episode, but I'm not really sure if that had anything important to do with the story at all. But it doesn't matter, honestly, because this game was built to just scare or creep you out. It's the sort of game that, you know, you play once by yourself and you think, oh, that's not too bad, and then you go on YouTube and literally find out that everyone on YouTube, including their grandmothers, have played this fucking game. This sort of became the rise for many YouTubers, as this helped elevate their acting careers as well as their YouTube views. At any rate, while I don't personally like the game, honestly, I didn't think it was all that scary. I did enjoy its minimalist style and the simple execution. It works, but for some people, it lacks substance. Enter Slender the Arrival, which came out just a year later. This time around, the game was far more fleshed out, even teaming up with the creators of Marble Hornets to really tie in and expand the lore. Again, it's not one of my personal favorite horror games. I'm just really not into walking simulators, no matter what, honestly. Though I do recognize how incredible it is that this small little indie game evolved into something way bigger. This in turn skyrocketed Slender Mania into newfound heights. The game rose to fame, as did the interest in Slender, spawning even more games that were pretty much a copy and paste version of the original 8 Pages, which, most of them were just And in turn, more stories were being written on creepypasta about Slender Man. People wrote their own personal encounters, or they created their own pieces of lore, or they created their own proxies, which again is basically another word for Slender's bitch. Separate web series based on the Slender mythos were born from the popularity of Marble Hornets at the time also. There was even a reference to Slender Man in Minecraft. Oh geez, I wonder where the reference could be. Hell, if we were to even go beyond Slender Man, we'd have to mention how ARGs were highly popularized by Marble Hornets. For those of you who don't know, ARG stands for Alternate Reality Game, which basically describes a sort of interactive media that doesn't really require much conventional play, but rather interactivity through various outlets such as decryption or other websites to even real life. Often ARGs are meant as a way of unconventional storytelling, and ultimately the goal goal of each game, or riddle, was to find the answers to the story and unfold the mystery behind the ARG, or in this case, Marble Hornets. Many people do believe Marble Hornets is an ARG, but I didn't really see that until after To the Arc came about. If you're not familiar, well, essentially during the series there was this cutoff point where someone hacked, quote unquote, the channel and started posting weird, out of the ordinary videos. When you did a bit of digging or followed the links, I don't remember how it worked, you would eventually find To the Arc, a cryptic ARG channel that was connected to Marble Hornets and shed light to many of the unsolved or unanswered questions from the series. Though you wouldn't get these answers easily, as all of the answers behind To the Arc's ARG were hidden via codes, websites, and several different kinds of cryptic messages, all of which were cleverly done and extremely well made, even by today's standards. These videos are 11 years old, and they're honestly some of the best ARG puzzles I've ever seen. So many of them are well thought out and are honestly quite challenging, but not so challenging that you'd never find the answer, just hard enough to make you think outside of the box. This sort of interactivity, again, wasn't created by Marble Hornets, but it really made everyone want to be Marble Hornets and start up their own mysteries. This not only got people interested in ARGs, but the Slender lore as a whole. Slender Mania was huge during this time, as was the growth of the mythos, so the dwindling audience that Marble Hornets was suffering from wasn't really from a lack of interest, just more of a side effect with how they made the series. And also, you gotta admit, despite the fact that this was all pretty well thought out generally, the creators of Marble Hornets, Troy Wagner and Joseph Delage, were still largely amateurs, so the writing, the directing, and the acting, oh god the acting, were very visible at times. Seriously, Jay's our main character, and the dude has the personality of a brick. But as much as I love to criticize Marble Hornets, or dive deep into the series, that's not really the focus of today's video. Slender Man is, and you can hop around other people's channels if you truly want to deep dive into Marble Hornets. Besides, it's like I said before, I haven't even finished the series, and honestly, I'm not interested in finishing anymore. But you know what is finished nowadays? The interest in Slender Man. Oh boy. I think we all know what I'm gonna talk about now. You just can't make a video about Slender Man without mentioning the tragedy that occurred some years after Marble Hornets started. That's right, I'm unfortunately, of course, talking about the Slender Man theme song.
Slender Man, all the children try to run.
Fuck this song. Nah, but seriously, fuck this song. No, but seriously, there was a stabbing that involved three 12-year-old girls in 2014. Anissa Weyer and Morgan Geyser believed that if they offered a sacrifice to Slender Man, they would be turned into proxies, which is something they read online or something like that. So they lured their best friend Peyton Lautner into the woods and proceeded to stab her 19 times. Thankfully, she recovered fully later on that summer, and the two girls were found not guilty by mental disease or defect. Keep in mind, at this point, creepypastas were at an all-time high, and not just Slender Man. This is around the point that more cringier stories were created and germinated within the fandom, making the fandom more appealing to teenagers more so than anyone else. I don't know what it is about white skinny teen psycho boys that make teenage girls go crazy, but it just does for some reason. Anyways, this horrible case sullied the name of Slender Man and the lore behind it forever. I hear a lot of people accuse this as being the nail in the coffin to the already dwindling fan base, but I can't comment on that since I already stopped being part of the fan base years prior. All I know is that I personally stopped seeing a lot of creepypasta content being a relevant thing during this time period. I think overall it was the decline of that rather than it was a decline of Slender Man that really killed the lore. Well, I mean that and the horrible fucking movie that was released just years after. Nobody cared, not even Sony, so I'm not even gonna bother talking about it because it is so fucking dumb. Good God, no. So with the interest declining and Slender practically being a dead meme, is there really any room left in this world for another Slender Man? Well, yes, actually. I'd argue there will always be an interest in Slender Man, yet it won't always be Slender Man that takes the forefront of this newfound interest. It sounds weird, but let me explain. Slender would always have to adapt, change it up, and bring about a new myth. And to that, I introduce you all to Siren Head, essentially the same shit as Slender Man, just with the new skin. Created by Trevor Henderson, who we've already talked about previously on Traumathon, Siren Head has the sort of same beginnings as Slender Man. It was inspired by horror, it has a rising interest, it has an ever-developing lore, and it even has its own game, which has been spearheaded by popular YouTubers, which in turn has made the character far more interesting. And of course, teenagers love him. Seriously, look up TikTok and Siren Head on YouTube, and you will be flooded by teens who are in love with this character. It's actually kind of charming seeing Siren Head take rise, as so many of its characteristics reminded me of Slender Man. It truly shows that even creepypastas are cyclical. Just give it a brand new coat of paint and it's back on track. I can't wait for Jeff the Killer's new iteration, Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. Oh wait, that's already a thing? Oh, well, shit. And yes, I understand that Siren Head and Slender Man aren't really that similar lore-wise, but come on. A slender, tall figure who stalks their prey, doesn't have a clear objective, possibly murders them. I'm not trying to diss anything about Siren Head. I think it is genuinely an unsettling creature, but honestly, there's just nothing too special about him when you look into him. It's one of those times that I wish the monster didn't have an explanation or anything deeper to him other than it being a scary background creature, which is exactly how he started life. Actually, both of these guys started their lives pretty much the same way. Just images in a photo, fleshed out carefully by fans, growing exponentially, until eventually we have a legend. And legends never die, but in this case, they were born to something bigger, maybe even something better.